Good morning, everyone. Welcome to Clackamas County Board of Commissioners, issues and updates on September 20, 2022. County Administrator Gary Schmidt, you're up.
Thank you, Chair Smith. So all commissioners are present. Commissioner Martha Schrader will be telephoning in. Is she on yet, Tony? No, as soon as she's online, we'll let you know.
And evidently, Gary, I will be calling on her periodically. She does not have the ability to raise her hand, although she can certainly interrupt us if she needs to speak.
Yes, we'll let you know as soon as she's joined. We have several governing bodies that are meeting today, so we'll start with those first, and the first one isn't here, so we'll jump to the second one. Housing Authority of Clackamas County. Chair, would you please convene as the Housing Authority?
I will recess as the Board of County Commissioners and convene as a Housing Authority of Clackamas County. Do we have Ann Leenstra up, Tony?
Joining momentarily, Chair.
Okay, do we wait for her, or do we start?
We'll wait just a second.
We'll wait for our other Housing Authority board member.
I'm on board, thank you.
Welcome, Ann. Thank you for participating, as always.
All right, you're now meeting as the Housing Authority of Clackamas County. These are requests for consent agenda. Item 1, approval of a Housing Authority resolution approving policy changes for the Family Self-Sufficiency Action Plan. No fiscal impact, no county general funds are involved. Tony Carter is the interim director. Please introduce your guest.
Good morning. I have with me Hillary Merritt. She's our Family Self-Sufficiency Coordinator at the Housing Authority and can answer any questions regarding the policies. On August 18th, we had a public hearing with no comments, so approval is now needed as we must submit to HUD by September 30th all the new action plan policy changes. No other comments.
Any questions or comments? Seeing no objections.
Item 2, approval of a Housing Authority board order to write off uncollectible debt for the first quarter of fiscal year 2023. Total uncollectible debt is $4,888.76. No county general funds are involved.
These are for debts for tenants who are no longer being served by the Housing Authority. While these debts will be written off for accounting purposes, they do go in a national database, and these clients will not be served with federal rent assistance until these debts are paid.
Great. Any questions or comments? Seeing no objections.
Item 3, approval to apply for a family self-sufficiency grant funding from the U.S. Department of Housing and Urban Development. Anticipated grant award is approximately $160,000, funded through the U.S. Department of Housing and Urban Development. No county general funds are involved.
This is basically a new renewal grant to keep funding our 2 family self-sufficiency coordinator positions. We are required to renew the grant every year to every 2 years.
Thank you. Questions or comments? Seeing none.
Item 4, approval to apply for a stability voucher grant funding from the U.S. Department of Housing and Urban Development. Funding amount will be determined by Housing and Urban Development. No county general funds are involved. Please give more background on the amount, please.
Okay. These new stability vouchers are from HUD, and likely the amount would not exceed what would be about 25 vouchers or $300,000. This would also include an additional funding for admin fee, which would cover the program costs for operating a new program.
Great. I like hearing that. Questions on this?
Yeah, those are additional to the ones we already have.
Those are additional and new.
Okay, thank you.
That's wonderful. Any other questions? Seeing no objections.
All right, Commissioner Schrader has now joined the meeting, FYI.
Commissioner Schrader, we are on the consent agenda for the Housing Authority. Go ahead.
All right, item 5, approval to apply for additional Veteran Administration supportive housing funding from the U.S. Department of Housing and Urban Development. The anticipated grant award is approximately $300,000. No county general funds are involved.
Again, this is an award for 25 vouchers that we are seeking, and we are supported by the local VA office for this request. We are looking to project-based most of these vouchers if we are awarded.
Questions or comments? Seeing no objections.
Okay, thank you. We'll go back to the first item. Chair, would you now convene as the local public health authority?
Do we need to vote on this since Ann Leenstra's here?
No, this is just any questions before it goes on this Thursday's consent agenda.
Thank you. Yes, I will recess as a Housing Authority for Clackamas County and convene as the Board of County Commissioners.
I'm sorry, Chair, would you convene as the local public health authority, please?
Yes, I will convene as the local public health authority. Thank you, Gary.
Thank you, Chair. All right, you're now meeting as a local public health authority. This is a request for consent agenda, approval of a board order appointing a local public health administrator, no fiscal impact, no county general funds are involved. You just discussed this a week or so ago, but this is now to put it on your consent agenda. Rod Cook is the Director of Health, Housing, and Human Services. Please introduce your guests.
Hi, Rod Cook, Health, Housing, and Human Services, and we have the Deputy Director of Public Health with us today to answer any questions if you have any.
And what's her name?
Kim LaCroix.
Krim, thank you.
I'm sorry, I didn't hear that.
Kim LaCroix.
Kim, welcome. Thank you for coming.
So give a
Present,
quick
please.
recap of what this is, please.
Sure. So this is basically an order to update the statutes that have recently passed for public health modernization. It's a housekeeping action. There's no substantive changes. It still has the Board of County Commissioners acting as the governing body of the local public health authority.
Okay, questions or comments, Commissioners? Commissioner Fisher.
Thank you, Chair Smith. So Gary, I have our meeting, I have our consent agenda, I see everything that we're doing, but I don't see this public health authority. Where is that?
Right here. That's why
Okay, so this is different
so
than
when
where
I
I go.
scrolled, I didn't see Public Health Authority. That's why I
Oh,
didn't announce
there it
right
is.
away. Yeah, it's,
It's there, yes.
Okay.
I just didn't
I
scroll
am
past
so sorry.
all right.
Thank you, Chair Smith, you helped me a
Well,
lot.
I made the same mistake. That's okay.
Yep, okay, thank
Do you have a question regarding this item, Commissioner Fisher?
No, I think the verbal update was good. I just always like to verify with reading the materials, so thank you.
See no objections to this item. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Next, Chair, would you convene as the North Clackamas Parks and Recreation District?
Yes, I will now recess as the Public Health Authority and convene as the North Clackamas Parks and Recreation District.
You're now meeting as the North Clackamas Parks and Recreation District. This is an advisory board and commission appointment. Tony, would you please go ahead?
The North Clackamas Parks and Recreation District currently has one opening on their advisory committee, Budget Committee. The roster holds 5 members with 3-year terms. The recommendation is Carol Cookson to a first term.
I will accept a motion to appoint Carol Cookson.
So moved.
Seconded.
Commissioner Savas has moved to appoint Carol Cookson to the North Clackamas Parks and Recreation Budget Committee. Commissioner Scholl has seconded that motion. Any further discussion? Seeing none, Tony, please call the poll.
Commissioner Fisher,
Aye.
Commissioner Scholl,
Aye.
Commissioner Savas,
Aye.
Chair Smith.
Aye, and Commissioner Schrader?
Commissioner Schrader? Commissioner Schrader has indicated she'll be muted for most of the conversations.
Okay, great. Thank you very much. So the motion passes 4-0, correct?
Yes.
Thank you very much.
All right, Chair, would you now convene as the Development Agency?
I will recess as the North Clackamas Parks and Recreation District and convene as a development agency.
You are now meeting as the Development Agency Board. You have a public hearing this Thursday, September 22nd, on a supplemental budget resolution. We inadvertently missed a step by briefing you last week, so we're going to do it this week. So Dan Johnson is the Director of Transportation and Development. Please go ahead, Dan.
Thank you so much, Chair Smith. Commissioners, Administrator Schmidt, we are here to talk to you about a pending supplemental budget. This is within the Clackamas Town Center District. This is not new to all of you who have been a part of construction in the past when we are developing our projects or our budgets, pardon me, at the beginning of the calendar years when those start. We do our best to estimate when those expenditures will come across the finish line. In this particular set of circumstances, we had a $20+ million project that we were working. This is the Sunnyside Road Improvement Project over I-205. A number of those expenditures were delayed and were pushed into this current fiscal year. And so basically this supplemental trues up the expenditure of those dollars. It recognizes year-end carryover, new beginning fund balance because we didn't spend those dollars in the last fiscal year, and then reattributes those dollars into capital expenditures for this fiscal year. It's basically moving the timing of the money. So happy to answer any questions you might have.
Thank you for this. Do we have questions or comments?
One comment.
Yes.
Dan, I want to say you did a great job on Sunnyside Road. That's beautiful up there. If we can get 82nd Avenue to look like that, we win.
We don't own that one yet, thank goodness, but we'll talk about that.
Okay.
Yeah, Commissioner Savas?
Yeah, so Dan, not necessarily, I'm okay with what the ask here is today, so I understand the circumstances. But I do like to know that at the intersection of 82nd Avenue and Sunnyside Road, Harmony,
Yep.
is that, all of that portion complete?
So when we scoped the project originally, the entire project basically extended from, if you think about Stevens Road, the entrance to Kaiser on the east perimeter, all the way to 82nd Sunny side, and had those improvements in that. When we got our bids back, we had to make the decision to split those projects up. So the project that I'm referring to right now basically covers from Stevens Road on the east side and extends past the promenade over towards the easterly edge of that 82nd intersection. And we have a second phase project planned if we're able to secure enough funding, remaining funding, to get that project completed. But that 82nd Avenue improvement with Sunnyside was not able to be pulled as a part of this phase one project.
So do you have adequate resources to do it?
We are working to leverage those now. We have some money left over within the Urban Renewal District, and we're looking for other grant funding or partnering opportunities to pull those together. And we'll be doing that during this next budget cycle.
Was not aware that the east work would jeopardize the west work at that intersection.
Yeah, I mean, the focus, couple things changed. We've had a long history with that particular intersection. A couple things changed. One with the VOC standards for congestion that were changed. We were regional centers that took some of the priority away from that. And also the focus was the bridge overpass and the necessity to widen that. That's why that east work prioritized that west work. And we can talk more offline if you want to talk about it.
Right.
Yep.
Thank you. Any other questions? Mark? No? Okay. Seeing no further questions, thank you.
All right, thank you. Next, Chair, would you convene as the Water Environment Services Board?
Recess as a development agency and convene as a Water Environment Services.
All right, you're now meeting as the Water Environment Services Board. These are requests for consent agenda. Item 1, approval of a settlement agreement and mutual release of all claims with Brown and Caldwell, Sladen Constructors, and APSCO. Settlement value is $385,000. Funding is through participating parties. No county general funds are involved. We have Stephen Madcourt, County Counsel, and Greg Geist, Director of Water Environment Services.
Thank you, Gary. Good morning, Commissioners. This is a matter that I briefed the board on in an executive session. This was concerning the improvements to the Kellogg wastewater treatment plant, specifically the pumps, in this case, the effluent pumps. So we had a dispute with our contractors and our designers, and it resulted in a settlement of $385,000 payable to us, which will be on your consent agenda on Thursday for approval of the settlement agreement and mutual release of all claims. Any questions?
Questions or comments?
I do.
Oh.
So the total cost of the project that we didn't get reimbursed for is how, I mean, that delta between the 385 and the total project?
Total cost of the project?
Well, I mean, for the replace the pumps, we didn't get 100% reimbursement, correct? We had to eat part of this, so how much did we not get compensated for?
Correct. Our total claim was about 1.1 million.
So we essentially have to cough up $800,000.
I wouldn't refer to it as coughing up. A lot of those were internal costs, such as attorney time, such as engineer time, our internal engineers and things like that. We're seeking recovery on that. But 385 from our designers and from our contractors is a good result for Wes.
Yep. Well,
Yep.
that's
We also had replacement pumps that we installed in there, which really weren't part of the project. They were backups in the event we lost capacity. So those really weren't part of the project per se either. We just did it as to have backup.
That's a significant cost to our constituents. Thank you. It'll move forward. We'll talk about it Thursday.
Thank you. Any other questions or comments? Seeing none.
Well, let me ask, do you want to make that a discussion item on Thursday?
Let's put it on consent agenda.
Okay. Item 2, approval of a construction contract with JQ Construction Incorporated for the Stormwater Inlet Replacement Project. Contract value is $353,121. Funding is through Water Environment Services, Surface Water Construction Funds. No county general funds are involved.
Good morning, Commissioners. Greg Geist, West Director. So yeah, this is a pretty straightforward contract for stormwater inlet replacement and additional inlets to prevent chronic flooding in the area of 95th Court and Stevens Way, and then out at 130th and Sunnyside. It was an older type development, didn't have enough capacity. We had localized flooding, and they need to be replaced.
Anytime that we're able to fix, these flooded areas in Clackamas County, and our aging systems, there's a lot of neighborhoods that are experiencing that. Anytime we're able to do stuff like this, I'm really happy about. So keep up the good work on identifying these projects and sources of money to fix them. Thank you. Any other comments?
Yeah, I never heard any complaints on this one. The area I heard complaints about, Greg, you and I have talked about several times. How's that progressing?
We got our stormwater management plan, or storm system master plan, recommended for approval from our advisory committee September 8th, and we will have meetings with the board to go over what's there, which includes that work on Kellogg Creek, and have a funding plan, a capital improvement plan that accompanies it.
When do you think that might?
By the end of the year.
End of the year.
Yep.
Okay, next.
All right, item 3, 4, and 5 are the same, but so I'll announce these together. They are approval of fiscal year 2021-22 report in lieu of audit form for 3 of the WES agencies. First, Surface Water Management Agency of Clackamas County. Second, Tri-City Service District. Third, Clackamas County Service District Number 1. There is no fiscal impact for either of the 3. There are no county general funds involved with either of the 3. This is really a formality, but we wanted to make sure you saw it. Go ahead, Greg.
Correct. So this is just part of our, related to our financial reporting requirements for fiscal year 21-22, or 21-22, sorry. And so back when we formed the WES partnership, that took us from doing 3 audits to 1 audit per year, which is a good thing. But since those entities, the 3 service districts still exist, we have to do what they call a report in lieu of audit. In past years, we've just had that be an administrative function by the chair, but this year we were asked to bring it forward to the full board in the interest of full transparency.
Questions or comments about these 3 items? Seeing no objections, thank you.
Great, thank you. Chair, would you now convene as the Board of County Commissioners?
I will recess as the Water Environment Services and convene as the Board of County Commissioners.
Thank you. We will continue with consent agenda requests. This is as the Board of County Commissioners. First, County Council. Item 1, approval of a revision to correct technical errors in Board Order 2022-36. A final order to form a joint water and sanitary authority relating to the Oak Lodge Water Service Authority. No fiscal impact, no county general funds are involved. Jeff Munns, Assistant County Counsel, go ahead.
Thank you, Gary. Good morning, Commissioners and Chair Smith. What we have here is a new Exhibit B to your order from May of this year. Basically, when Oak Lodge submitted all their paperwork to Department of Revenue and Metro, they discovered that there was some deficiencies in their map and some errors in legal description that they had provided as part of their packet. Those have been corrected, and what we're doing with this revision is simply attaching that exhibit to our board order so they all match and have the correct information.
Great. Yeah, I looked at that legal description. It's quite interesting.
It's great reading, isn't it?
Yes, 143 touch points on the legal description. Yeah. Yes. Any other questions or comments on this? Seeing none, go ahead.
Great.
Thank you.
Item 2, approval of a settlement agreement with George L. Youssef to resolve litigation relating to a motor vehicle collision involving county-owned vehicle operated by a county employee. The settlement value is $165,000. Funding is through the County Risk Fund. No county general funds are involved. Sean Lilligren, Assistant County Counsel. Go ahead.
Good morning. This matter comes to you from executive session, a litigation that I've handled for the county regarding a motor vehicle accident involving a sheriff's deputy. This matter has been, went to judicial settlement conference last week. We've reached a tentative settlement agreement for $165,000, subject to your approval, of course. This is proposed to be on your consent agenda this Thursday.
Questions or comments? Seeing no objection for this moving forward. Thank you, Sean.
Thank you.
Thank you. My apologies, Commissioners. I skipped the first item, elected officials, and that is, it is a sheriff's office item, and the sheriff is asked to postpone this until next week. So we'll just make till next week to bring this back to you.
Thank you.
Back to the list. Technology Services. Item 1, approval of a board order authorizing issuance of a purchase order for Acquia Cloud Platform Services from Carasoft Technology Corporation. Purchase order value is $214,917.87 for 3 years. Funding is through budgeted county general funds. Lanu Parapilli is our Director of Technology Services. She started about 3 weeks ago. So Commissioners, you last saw her on the interview process, but she's now the official Technology Services Director, and Dave DeVore is the Deputy Director of Technology Services. Go ahead, please.
Hi, Dave. Well, welcome. This is our first meeting, and I hope you enjoy Clackamas County as much as we all do.
Thank you. Thank
All
you,
right,
Chair.
please go ahead.
Thank you. Good morning, everyone. Dave and I are here today to request your approval for the renewal, actually the purchase of a 3-year subscription with Acqua Cloud. Acqua Cloud is the vendor who provides us with hosting services for our external website, also provides the platforms and the tools for all our applications and managing content. So we really need this without, to provide services without disruption. It's around $71,000 per year, but for 3 years. It is funded through general funds, and we have the funds within our budget for this fiscal year. So we respectfully request you to approve this renewal. Thank you.
Any questions or comments for the presenters?
I think you said it. I think it's clear, but I just want to verify. So the 214,000, that's each year, not over the 3 years. So, correct?
314,000 is for the 3 years.
Okay.
Each year it's 71.
Your subscription?
Yeah, 639 each.
Thank you.
Dave, you have to quit talking so much.
I'm not complaining.
See, no objections to this moving forward. Thank you.
Thank you. Next, Transportation and Development. Item 1, approval of an intergovernmental agreement with Metro for removal of abandoned recreational vehicles, collection of bulky waste at affordable housing communities, and supplementary garbage pickup serving unhoused community members. The agreement value is $300,000. Funding is through the State of Oregon allocated funds. No county general funds are involved. Dan Johnson, Director of Transportation and Development. Go ahead.
Thank you so much. You're all very familiar with these discussions to date. This is basically finalizing and formalizing the IGA, the intergovernmental agreement between ourselves and Metro, so the county can secure this one-time funding. Essentially, the total, the ask was a little bit higher. We secured about $300,000. This will go towards the 3 programs the administrator just described. Should you have any questions, I'm here to answer them.
Yes, Commissioner Savas.
Yes, I'm okay with this, but my question is, are we the only county, or are all other counties getting the same award so that people aren't inclined to just drop them off here in Clackamas for the free disposal?
I'll have to get back to you. The award amount was very similar across all the other entities. The purpose, I don't have that information readily available, but I can find that out for you.
Okay.
I believe there was some discussions in other counties about similar programs. There was cross-jurisdictional discussions between Evan Polk and Sustainability and other individuals. But what they actually applied for, I don't have that right now. I can get it to you.
I got several complaints, but I forgot to mention this to you. RV that has been there a long, long time, appears abandoned. It may not be abandoned. It's on the intersection of Monterey and Fuller. Okay, if you look, so you're going all the way to the end, the west end of Monterey. There's an RV to the right, so it's blocking the line of sight. That's the complaint issue. It's blocking the line of sight. People are just petrified to turn out. They cannot see.
And that's a great point. I mean, again, this is one-time funding, so we're being very strategic with it. And the things that we are working closely with County Council, the Sheriff's Office, our Neighborhood Livability representatives to prioritize, again, because as it's one-time funding, we want to make sure we use it efficiently and effectively. We are prioritizing items such as that. If they are causing a safety issue or concern with the citizens of Clackamas County and their ability to use our infrastructure, they are a priority. We'll have somebody go out and take a look at it.
Thank you. Commissioner Scholl.
Yes, Dan, is the Red Patrol going to be involved in picking up solid waste on this IGA?
Not specifically with this request. Okay. These are internal programs that we are developing that are being funded through Metro. It does not alleviate the fact that the Red Patrol is still available where needed.
Okay.
And Dan, when do you expect to start energetically removing some of these abandoned RVs?
We already have.
Yeah, that's what I thought. I wanted you to go on record as saying that. So the folks out there listening, we have secured funds. It is very expensive to remove one RV, whether it's, a little camper, a little trailer, or a larger motorhome. There's about 6 steps that we have to go through in order to get that RV off the pavement. But we heard you, we've heard our constituents loud and clear, and we're going to start energetically upping the program even more than we have.
That is correct. We are leveraging funds where available. There are a number of partnerships between ourself, Water and Environment Services, other entities to fund. County administration has actually funded a number of them through our small general fund, asked for that. But we have been funding where we can. Transportation maintenance has funded as well, and this provides us more funding to be more aggressive in those removals.
And to be very clear, remember, this is abandoned RVs. These are not really bad-looking RVs that people are still living in, that some folks may have an objection to. These are abandoned. Thank you very much. No objections to this moving forward?
Item 2, approval of a resolution declaring the public necessity and purpose for acquisition of rights of way, easements, and fee property, and authorizing good faith negotiations and condemnation actions for the Redland Road turn lanes at Ferguson and Bradley project. Right-of-way budget is $277,428. Total project value is $2,210,310. Funding through the Community Road Fund. No county general funds are involved.
You've had these before. Whenever we start a capital project, we have to basically do this declaration. This is a declaration to allow us to start negotiations. As the board is very aware, we don't advance any condemnation action without coming back and having a discussion with the board in executive session before that action takes place. There is no such request at this point in time. It's simply to start negotiations with these property owners.
Questions or comments? Seeing no objections?
Item 3, approval of a resolution declaring the public necessity and purpose for acquisition of right-of-way easements and fee property and authorizing good faith negotiations and condemnation actions for the Woodcock Creek at Grimm Road Bridge Replacement Project. Right-of-way budget is $23,520. Total project value is $985,071. Funding is through the County Road Fund and Oregon Watershed Enhancement Board Restoration Grant Funds. No county general funds are involved.
Similar to the last action, this basically allows us to start negotiation for right-of-way acquisition for the project.
Questions or comments? Seeing no objections.
Item 4, approval of a personal services contract with Amirio Design for the Eagle Creek Dews Road Intersection Improvement Project. Contract value is $252,158.28. Funding is through the Community Road Fund and System Development Charges. No county general funds are involved.
Essentially, this is approval with a contract to improve an intersection outside of Estacada. Estacada is growing, and essentially they are having congestion issues at this particular intersection. This contract will look to design those improvements and improve those to move it into a more operational status to provide capacity for continued growth in Estacada.
Questions or comments? Seeing no objections.
Item 5, approval of a resolution to apply for a local government grant for a roadway improvement project at Fayer Park. Grant value is $185,000. Funding through the Oregon Parks and Recreation Department. No county general funds are involved.
Fayer Park is located southeast of the city of Molalla. And it's
by the way,
Friar Park. Oh, yeah,
like
that's not
it's
good.
Funny, yes.
Yeah, we'll talk about that later. Yeah. It's adjacent to the Molalla River, provides day use and picnic activities along with 20 overnight campsites. The project will expand day use parking, lengthen existing parking spaces, add and replace curbing, add concrete approaches, repair some asphalt campsites. It's a variety of on-site improvements. Total project is around $370,000. This is a grant to provide at 50%. This will provide 50% of the total project funding. So happy to answer any questions you might have.
When do you expect to start construction?
Yeah.
That's the million-dollar question. You know what? You can email me.
We'll let you know. Yep.
Thank you very much for this.
Thank you. Next, Health, Housing, and Human Services. Item 1, approval of a grant amendment extending duration, increasing funding, and adding services to a federal subrecipient agreement with Hoodland Senior Center for the provision of vaccine access, nutrition services, health promotion, energy assistance, and transportation services to eligible individuals. The amendment value is $90,028 for 1 year. Grant value is now $184,348 for 2 years. Funding is through the Older Americans Act, Federal Transportation Administration, Ride Connection, TriMet, and HEAT Oregon. No county general funds are involved. Rod Cook, Director of Health, Housing, and Human Services. Go ahead.
Yes, Amendment number 2 provides budget adjustments for ongoing delivery for services for fiscal year 22-23, a subrecipient agreement with Hoodland Senior Center to provide Older Americans Act funded services for residents living in the Hoodland and Mount Hood area.
Questions or comments? Seeing no objections.
Item 2, approval of an amendment increasing funding and making administrative changes to an intergovernmental agreement with the Oregon Department of Human Services for Senior Health Insurance Benefits Assistance State Health Insurance Assistance Program. The amendment value is $13,500. Agreement value is now $61,500. Funding is through the Oregon Department of Human Services. No county general funds are involved.
Yes, the SHEPA program provides information, counseling, and assistance to seniors and other Medicare recipients regarding health insurance. The program provides information regarding rights and resources for Medicare residents through the fraud hotline, SHEPA helpline, and through public presentations at outreach events such as the Clackamas County Fair.
Interesting. Questions or comments? Seeing no objections.
Item 3, approval of a federal grant agreement with the U.S. Department of Housing and Urban Development for the Housing Our Families program to provide housing assistance, supportive services, and case management to homeless households. Grant value is $182,644, plus $45,661 in matching funds. Funding is through the U.S. Department of Housing and Urban Development. Match funds are provided through the Oregon Department of Housing and Community Services. No county general funds are involved.
Yes, this program provides housing assistance, supportive services, and case management for approximately 15 households annually. These grant funds allow the program to secure permanent housing through the payment of deposits and rent assistance.
Questions or comments? Commissioner Fisher.
Yeah, I'm just curious, these are a different set of funds, but it sounds like it does what our homeless services program does. How do we streamline and consolidate and...
Yes, so what you're seeing is a pre-merger of the development of the new housing division. These are funds that were applied for under the old system, and so the money has now been received under the old system. So for this last year, we'll flow it through social services, and then next year you'll see this movement over to the new division that we've created for housing. So that's how the integration will occur. So, and last week, you approved the budget to actually allow for this to occur.
Okay, and then is the functionality streamlined in that there's coordination between the two programs as to how services are delivered?
Yes, Supportive Housing Services team is meeting with social services weekly to integrate all those pieces of the program.
No, it's a lot to do. Thank you, Rod,
There
for
is,
that
yes.
explanation. I appreciate it.
You're welcome.
Seeing no objections.
Item 4, approval of a federal grant agreement with the U.S. Department of Housing and Urban Development for the Hope One leasing program to provide housing assistance, supportive services, and case management for homeless households. Grant value is $304,609, plus $76,152 in matching funds. Funding is through the U.S. Department of Housing and Urban Development. Match is provided through the Oregon Department of Housing and Community Services. No county general funds are involved.
Yes, this program would fund chronically homeless residents, receive support services, case management, and housing through the use of these funds. Approximately 15 households are served by this program annually. Same situation here where it'll be moved over.
Questions or comments? Seeing no objections.
Item 5, approval of a federal grant agreement with the U.S. Department of Housing and Urban Development for the Coordinated Housing Access System to provide referral services for homeless individuals. Grant value is $31,928, plus $7,982 in matching funds. Funding is through the U.S. Department of Housing and Urban Development. The match is provided through the Federal Community Development Block Grant Funds. No county general funds are involved.
Yes, these funds are used to answer incoming calls and ensure that homeless residents who are seeking housing are referred to the type of housing and services programs that best fit their needs. The CHA program is an essential component of the countywide housing and housing services referral system.
Questions or comments? Seeing no objections.
Item 6, approval of a federal grant agreement with the U.S. Department of Housing and Urban Development for the Rent Well Rapid Rehousing Program to provide rental assistance, education, case management, and supportive services to homeless individuals. Grant value is $129,405, plus $32,351 in matching funds. Funding is through the U.S. Department of Housing and Urban Development. Match is funded through the Oregon Department of Housing and Community Services. No county general funds are involved.
Yes, as mentioned, this grant award will be used for the Rentwell Rapid Rehousing Program, which is designed to reduce housing barriers and provide rental assistance for permanent housing for homeless individuals and families.
Questions or comments? Seeing no objections?
Item 7, approval of a federal grant agreement from the U.S. Department of Housing and Urban Development for the HOPE 2 program to provide housing assistance, supportive services, and case management for homeless households. Grant value is $79,773, plus $19,943 in matching funds. Funding is through the U.S. Department of Housing and Urban Development. The match is provided through the Federal Community Services Block Grant Funds. No county general funds are involved.
Yes, this program includes support services, case management, and housing support through the payment of housing deposits and rental assistance.
Questions or comments? Seeing no objections?
Item 8, approval of a federal grant agreement with the U.S. Department of Housing and Urban Development for the Housing Our Heroes program to provide housing assistance, supportive services, and case management to homeless households with at least one person who has served in the military. The grant value is $366,681, plus $91,670 in matching funds. Funding is through the U.S. Department of Housing and Urban Development. The match is funded through the Oregon Department of Housing and Community Services, and $25,000 is budgeted with county general funds.
Yes, and specifically for vets, the funds are used to pay for deposits and rental assistance for approximately 18 households annually.
Questions or comments?
Yeah, I got a question. So, Rod, on this and the last few that we've just approved here for consent agenda for Thursday, my question in general is that are these automatically renew so that where it's not one-time rental assistance, for example, where we're creating a bridge and then they fall off, or are we relatively assured that there's a likelihood that these will continue in perpetuity?
Yes, I'd like to say relatively sure that it would continue on. These are funds that we've been getting through the decades, and we expect to continue. What you will see the difference is what we alluded to earlier, that instead of coming through social services, you'll see that coming through the new housing as we integrate all those services. But yes, we see this as ongoing funding.
So as the rents go this way, and they're projected to go this way even more so than they are today, unfortunately, did the grants increase as much, so we're still helping the same number of people?
A lot of this is state and federal, so I'd have to get back to you on that, and maybe that's part of our well, I won't go there, but that we'll check into that and see how that those funds flow with what our priorities are for the county.
Well, I guess what I'm trying to get at is that are we able to, because of inflation and inflation in rents, are we able to serve the same number of people, or is that declining because of the inflation? That's you don't have to answer right now, but that's the basis of my question.
Yeah, anecdotally, I'd say it's probably not keeping up with the increases, but we'll check on that.
Okay, thank you.
Okay.
Yeah. Any other questions? Seeing no objections.
Item 9, approval to submit the annual consolidated application for the Continuum of Care program with the U.S. Department of Housing and Urban Development. Total requested funding is $4,497,797. Funding is through the U.S. Department of Housing and Urban Development with matching funds from federal, state, county, local, and private sources. $25,000 of budgeted county general funds are being used for the Housing Our Heroes program.
Yes, and this is the one for $4.4 million, is that?
Yes.
I'm sorry, okay, thank you. So this this is a consolidated application process. The county will be applying for funding to administer the following 9 programs: Housing Our Heroes, Coordinated Housing Access, Housing Our Families, HOPE 2, HOPE Leasing, Rentwell Rapid Rehousing, Homeless Management Information System, and our CLC, Coordinated Care, Planning Activities, and Shelter Plus Care. So this is a conglomeration of all those funds that we'll be asking for through this process.
Any questions or comments? Seeing no objections.
Item 10, approval of a federal grant agreement for the Community Development Block Grant. The grant value is $2,203,267. Funding through the U.S. Department of Housing and Urban Development. No county general funds are involved.
Yes, HUD announced annual allocations for the CDBG and home and ESG programs. Annual Community Development Block Grant, that's the CDBG. Funds are used for numerous community construction projects, public facility improvements, and public services throughout Clackamas County, like the clinic that this board helped move forward a few months ago.
Great, great. Questions or comments? Seeing no objections.
Item 11, approval of a federal grant agreement for the Home Investment Partnerships Grant. The grant value is $1,133,026. Funding through the U.S. Department of Housing and Urban Development. No county general funds are involved.
Yes, annual allocations for these funds were announced May 17, 2022. The annual Home Investment Partnerships Grants provides funding for affordable housing projects, tenant-based rental assistance, and funding for community housing and development organizations.
Questions or comments? Seeing no objections, I want to thank you for applying and all of these grant monies for housing, homeless, and all the situations out there. It's just really remarkable that you and your team are identifying these sources of money for us.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Appreciate that.
Gary.
Item 12, approval of a federal grant agreement for the Emergency Solutions Grant. Grant value is $192,180. Funding through the U.S. Department of Housing and Urban Development. No county general funds are involved.
Yes, these were also announced by HUD in May 17, 2022. The ESG, or the Emergency Services Solutions Grant, funding provides homeless services assistance through administration, emergency shelter services, rapid rehousing services, and homeless management and information system for reporting and contract monitoring.
Questions or comments? Seeing no objections.
Thank you, Arad. That is it for the consent agenda. All of these items, including the special district items for consent, will all be on this Thursday's business meeting agenda.
Thank you very much.
All right, next item, public hearing this Thursday, the 22nd, a supplemental budget resolution for the county. Again, apologies, we should have told you this last week, but we're telling you now. It's preparation for your public hearing this Thursday. Elizabeth Comfort is the finance director. Go ahead, please.
Go
Good
ahead.
morning, Elizabeth Comfort, Finance Director for the county, and good morning, Chair and Commissioners. Oregon budget law found in ORS 294 requires that we have a supplemental resolution before a fund or department exceeds its budgeted spending limits. So today we're bringing a supplemental budget to you as a request for 9 items totaling $11,476,909. This is a result of additional funding to increase the spending authority in these departments. And briefly, I'll summarize these changes. In our HR division, we are transferring an additional $136,000 from general fund for 2 year limited term full-time analysts to help with the recruitment. And then also in our juvenile department, it's just a housekeeping. We're just moving from personnel to professional services. We're just doing that. It's a housekeeping presenting to you, but we're doing it to keep their budget actuals to match their budget proposal. And then we also have in our special grants fund in ARPA, we're carrying $62,000 over from last fiscal year that you approved for Gladstone. You approved their use of $200,000 of ARPA dollars. All but 64 was expended, so we're carrying that over into this current fiscal year for the Gladstone Library Program. And then in H3S, we have approximately $7.2 million in new revenue from various grants, and so increasing those operating expenditures appropriations. And then in Health Center, we're also recognizing new charges and fee revenue for a new FTE of about $170,000. In our Parks and Forestry Fund, we've increased some charges, and we're increasing our staff with a full-time park ranger position. So we're adding about $76,000 of those new fees to the revenue, which is allowing us to increase the staffing there. And then in TS, we had a bunch of projects planned, and we did not get those all taken care of, so we're carrying over about $3.4 million of last year's expenditures, unspent dollars, into this current year's budget. And then finally, our self-insurance fund, we're adding 2-year limited term HR business system analyst position for software development at about $132,000. So we're moving that $132,000 out of contingency up into personnel costs. So that increases our appropriations.
I have a couple questions. Regarding in technology services, the 3.4 million carryover of projects that we couldn't get completed, was that ARPA allocations?
I will get back to you on that. I didn't do my homework, and they're gone.
I was just curious.
Let me find out.
Yeah, would you please let me know on that? And then the 2 FTE for HR for recruitment, I'm not sure if I heard correctly. Is that limited duration or not?
Yes.
It is. So what those 2 positions are, because we're so backlogged on filling vacancies, that we're bringing in some help to get those applications processed, get those job announcements out through the door, the hiring done, correct?
Yes.
And then once that's done, these positions, they know they're temporary?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
Are they fully loaded?
It is, yes, it is one position for 2 years, limited term, so the position ends in 2 years, simply to clear the backlog. I am requesting this position, Commissioners. It is
Yeah, I thought you
essential.
did.
It's essential. We cannot, we're over 100 positions that are in the queue for recruitment. That is astronomical. We need to clear that out.
Yes, that's fine. You did that, and this is beyond what we approved in the budget.
Correct.
Thank you very much for that. I just had points of clarification. Any more questions?
Yeah, I have a question.
Yes, Paul.
Kind of maybe it was answered in a way, but I'll be more direct. Of the general fund positions, not the Health and Human Services, because that's different funds, are these positions likely to be, are they safe knowing that we've got substantial cuts ahead?
Yes.
Okay.
I'm making that statement. They're mostly sworn officers in the sheriff's office. There are non-general funded positions within those vacancies. I'm reviewing this very carefully, Commissioners. I'm very, very careful with departments. Don't fill a vacancy if we're about to potentially look at how we're going to reduce costs. So I'm 98% confident that these are positions that would not have any impact as we look at budget reductions.
Okay, so what's not included in the packet here, but you mentioned the 100 positions, the vacant positions, are those on freeze, or what are those?
These are positions that are almost, our staff's doing a phenomenal job. These are almost a year that's been in the backlog, way before you even talked about any freezes or budget issues. So we're clearing out the backlog for essential county positions.
Thank you.
So, but there's 100 remaining?
There's 100 to go, yes.
Okay. I'd like to just get a total, what that would be with the roll-ups, what that value is.
Are you asking us to stop that, Commissioners?
Well, aren't they already budgeted for?
Already budgeted, yes.
They're already budgeted, so it's already part of the ongoing budget we approved in this fiscal year.
Last
Correct.
fiscal year and this fiscal year.
Yes. Okay. Any objections to this moving forward? Do we take a vote on this? I lost track.
Public hearing on Thursday.
That's right, it's a public hearing. Thank you very much. Appreciate that.
Okay, thank you. Next, the highlight of today, Project Turnkey, application for Phase 2. We have Rod Cook and Vahid Brown from Health, Housing, and Human Services will present. There's a memo in your packet. I'm gonna tee it off for you. So Commissioners, today you have a decision point. That is to move forward with Phase 2 of Project Turnkey or not. If yes, you do need to identify by name hotels you want to submit for Phase 2, the due diligence. This is not, you're not purchasing hotels today, but you're authorizing our staff to work with the state on which hotels you'd like to perform due diligence on. So you do need to name hotels today. Sorry I took your thunder away, but go ahead, please, Rod and Vahid.
Rod Cook, Health, Housing, and Human Services Director. With me, I have Vahid Brown, who will give our presentation this morning.
Good morning, Chair Smith and Commissioners, County Administrator Schmidt. Good news, the application that the county submitted to Turnkey in July was successful. We were moved past Phase 1 into Phase 2. We've been assigned consultant brokers from the Oregon Community Foundation who are in the wings waiting to meet with us to identify the properties of interest to our county to pursue with this potential fund award. The movement to Phase 2 does not guarantee that we receive funds, but it does give us the opportunity to enter into due diligence on a property identified by the county, property or properties identified by the county. to move forward for consideration for purchase. The broker that works with Health, Housing, and Human Services has been working with staff, and staff have been providing you with updates in executive sessions over previous months regarding available properties in the county. We've looked at a lot of different hotels. So I think the direction that staff is seeking today, and as Administrator Schmidt already said, is for properties to be identified for us to move from this meeting to go talk to OCF and say, we're ready to start looking at these buildings or building. You determine. I did speak with OCF before issues today, just to inquire a little bit about process, to confirm some of the questions that had been kind of circling around these matters. Yes, OCF does fund and pay for all of the due diligence. The practice of OCF in turnkey awards in the past has been to typically do due diligence on a property at a time. If there is a competition consideration at play, they are happy to support due diligence to sort of focus on moving forward on one property and start engaging due diligence on additional property or properties. But they also need to be stewards of the state funds here and not squander resources, obviously. So there is an opportunity to move forward with preliminary due diligence steps on multiple properties. I think that my sense from staff at Oregon Community Foundation was, we're looking at kind of 3, I think, is the upward limit of consideration at a given time. In terms of the property considerations that should inform our kind of assessment of what properties to move forward on, properties in good condition that don't require a lot of additional investment or time in making them ready for folks to be accommodated in them. Properties that are, within, that are accessible to amenities. So we're looking at transit and groceries and things like this, access to other supportive services that aren't delivered on site, if that's the case. And then reasonable market value. But the Oregon Community Foundation did say that they understand that every community is different, that there are different price points for real estate in different parts of the state. And so there's not an upward limit that says if it's, this dollar per door, that's a no. They're cognizant and supportive of counties having to work with different market conditions in different parts of the state. So there's not an upward price point that is a limit there. And I think that's all the information that I've got at the moment.
Rod, any comments?
No, nothing to add.
I'm sure commissioners will want discussion. Up first, Commissioner Savas.
Yeah, well, we've been through a lot in executive session on this topic, and thank you, Fahid and Rod, for your work and the update, Fahid. So it sounds to me, if I'm summarizing what OCF had mentioned to you today, it's likely we ought to be poisoning ourselves to position or prioritize our number one, right? And it seems to me, I guess I'm speaking personally, it seems to me that if we have roughly 90 residents in the county that we are putting up in hotels today, roughly, right?
Yes, roughly. There's about 51 rooms that we directly contract with, and there's funds that we include in contracts with providers that work with folks experiencing homelessness that are able to use those funds to place additional households temporarily in motels for safety out those streets. That all told would, if all spent at once, would be 40 additional rooms.
Okay, so the 50 are people that are houseless, and the remainder is also houseless, or they are different conditions?
It's more, the 50 that we contract with, those are under continual operation. More or less, we're contracting them as shelters, as transitional accommodation facilities that are in constant use. With the other 40 is a quantifying of the fiscal capacity in those contracts with our providers, that they work with families with lots of different circumstances. They have in their contracts the funds available that in the event that that's deemed necessary, they can accommodate a family they're working with or a person they're working with in a motel room for a night, for a week. It's not meant to be long-term accommodation. It's really a client service fund that's in their contract. And so it functions differently in terms of operations. Operationally, those 50 units, those are continually used as shelter. The funds in the contracts with our providers are funds available to them that they could provide a motel room to a household they're working with in the event of need.
Okay, well, thank you. So what I'm getting at is that, okay, let's just say it's 50. I think it's imperative, I think, for us. I don't think they're going to give us, authorization to buy 3 or 4 or maybe even 2. It sounds like maybe 1 might be, maybe our limit. We don't know. So I think that because of this and knowing that things are not likely to get better, I personally, my opinion is to go for the one with the largest amount of rooms and increase our odds. I agree with, the typical recommendation that they be in areas where there's transit, where there's services, where there's good food, all those kinds of things that are nearby, and don't force people into a dangerous area. My concern about one of them is it's over freeway overpass, and there's no real safe pedestrian crossing over the overpass over the freeway. And it's also close to or embedded in a suburban housing area. So the one unit on the corner, 212 and 82nd, of these 12, seems to be the most ideal. It certainly has the most amount of food, quality food, fast food, everything, you name it, and transit. That's my pick for the priority, and I think it sounds like, from what you learned, prioritization is probably what we ought to be doing.
I think that's fair. That's a fair summary of my conversation with OCF. I think that we would be best suited, I think, to move forward with a priority property or properties. We would initiate due diligence on one particularly, potentially contract with providers to begin due diligence on additional properties for competitive purposes, but we would execute the due diligence one at a time.
Thank you. We have possibly 3 other commissioners in the queue. Commissioner Mark Scholl.
Mm-hmm. Yes, good morning. This morning, we heard from Rodney Cook from H3S about grants that reflected a insight into the different types of programs the county has to deal with homelessness and housing support. It's extensive. A few months ago, in fact, even last year, when we first started looking at the Project Turnkey, we were presented with some 12 potential motels throughout the region of the county to look at. We got that down to about 4. And with each of them, there is something good, there is something bad. None of them are like 100 out of 100 in terms of desirability. The county is working, and for the people listening to this video, the county is working on safety off the street projects. They take time. They take support from the community, not just the county staff. Some of those safety off the street projects could look like the Veterans Village, which many consider to be a very affordable paradigm for emergency shelter. But we have this opportunity to look at one more option for helping people who are experiencing houselessness, and that's, again, the Project Turnkey. So I support moving ahead with Phase 2 to allow the state, the Oregon Community Foundation, to conduct due diligence on a hotel and maybe a second one, a second option 2 priority as soon as possible. And for folks out there listening, that Phase 2 due diligence is to assess the condition, the maintenance, and the potential for the property to be used by the county to provide one more option for essential housing for the people who need help. So I advocate today to move forward with Phase 2 on my recommendation for the number one priority is Clackamas Inn and Suites located at 16010 Southeast 82nd. And if I should be asked to provide a second priority, that would be Comfort Suites at 15929 Southeast McKinley Avenue. Thank you.
Was that a motion? No?
And that's a suggestion. If you want me to make a motion, I'd be happy to do so.
We'll have more discussion before we entertain a motion. Thank you, Commissioner Fisher.
Thank you, Chair Smith. So, Vahid, I want to make sure I understand the additional information since talking to the Oregon Community Foundation. They would like to know what our priorities are. They will do due diligence on one property at a time. And so it would be helpful for you to have a priority list from us. So what I would suggest, I agree with Commissioner Scholl in moving forward with this, and I also agree that our first priority should be Clackamas Inn and Suites, and I also agree that the second priority should be Comfort Suites, but if there is an opportunity to do due diligence on a third property, I would suggest Econo Lodge. And Chair Smith, I'm ready to make a motion to that effect if you're ready to entertain that. Okay.
Yes,
I have a question.
yeah, and I have not yet spoken on this item. Solving the homeless problem is dubious at best. But we're using the tools that have been presented to us. We're using the tools that the state of Oregon has given us to buy this hotel or a hotel to help with the problem. We have had huge outcry from our public on get these people off the streets. We don't like seeing this. We don't like to see tents. We don't like seeing garbage everywhere. So this is an attempt, one attempt, and there are many, of trying to address the homeless population. I'm sure any property that we pick is going to have some objection. We know that going forward. But this is also an opportunity for us to engage the community in a conversation about homelessness, and we welcome that. We have 3 properties here that could go. Maybe only one is going to go. In likelihood, 1, maybe 2 properties, and they've been prioritized by 2 commissioners here. So you're going to have an opportunity, public, to weigh in on what you think is happening and to help us in our decision to decide, and we can help you in the education process on how we deal with homelessness today in the year 2022. That may change down the line. We don't know what is facing us, but I think the board generally can say that if we don't start addressing this homeless situation now, it's only going to get worse. And so this is our attempt, our one attempt at trying to work forward on this. Commissioner Savas, I believe you wanted to say something, and 2 other commissioners are in the queue.
Yeah, I had a question and I got a comment. So the question is, if, let's say tomorrow or Thursday, another property comes to our attention that's viable in a strong way, I mean, is there an opportunity to submit that one as well?
Yes, my conversation with the Oregon Community Foundation is our consultants that are assigned to us take direction from the county. So when the county says, we would like to explore this property, please do the due diligence to determine the quality of the property. Then the ultimate decision made by their council looks at those things that I mentioned. Is it in good condition, close to services? Is it a reasonable price per room?
Okay. So my commentary is to the public. I know my colleagues have heard this before, but when we got started on this second round of Turnkey, I asked the question, I suggested that staff look at other things besides hotels. I think that would be, cheaper and or sizable or whatnot, and just increase our opportunities. Apartments, for example, are one of those. The rationale I felt was that whatever we buy is going to need to be modified internally, kitchenettes and so forth, accommodations. I don't know what that entails. I'm just concerned that from past experiences, when we acquire a property, we have learned that, oh my gosh, this is wrong and that's wrong. And then pretty soon it's almost a tear down and it's 5-year delay, and we can't afford a delay, and let alone the cost goes up significantly for that. So that is a concern no matter what property. And hopefully the due diligence, hopefully, I know it's designed to do that, will catch that, but also this due diligence, I hope, it also includes pretty well a solid expert opinion estimate, cost estimate, to convert these to, again, permanent living quarters, if you will. So that said, we have heard and I have seen, and I've gone to a lot of areas around the region and other counties as well, by the way, south of the metro region, where things have gone right and things have gone wrong. And I found that, frankly, where a lot of things can go wrong is when they're really in neighborhoods where there's children and so forth. So having a buffer, and I've heard this in Portland as well, having buffers in neighborhoods is really important. So it's a shame that some of the 12 here, that original list of 12, are really ideal, because some of these really don't have, they're sizable, they're far more than 50 rooms or 45 rooms, and there's a significant buffer, which I again fond of, but they've been ruled out for reasons I won't go into today, because I don't want to embarrass anyone. But that said, I would prefer really that we make a motion on each one of these at a time. So I move that we approve Clackamas Inn Suites 16010 Southeast 82nd Drive as one of the properties to move forward on due diligence.
A motion has been made. Do I hear a second?
Can I amend the motion slightly?
It's up to the motion
It needs to be
maker.
seconded first.
I will second that.
Okay.
Yeah, I will
I
second
would
that.
just move that we give clear direction and move that the Clackamas Inn and Suites is our first priority for due diligence from the Oregon Community Foundation.
I think I can accept that. I want to vote on each of them one at a time.
Okay. So, Chair Smith, I'd like to amend the motion. Do we have a second to amend the motion?
Let's repeat the motion. The motion has been made to accept Clackamas Inn and Suites as number one, and what is the amendment to the motion?
Oh,
I'll restate it for,
Thank you.
I'll make it
Okay.
easy.
All
So
right.
instead of the
First of all,
amendment,
withdraw the original motion, please, Commissioner Savas.
I'll withdraw the original
Thank you.
motion, and then I'll restate the motion to say that I suggest that we move forward as our number one priority, Clackamas Inn and Suites at 16010 Southeast 82nd Drive for Phase 2, the due diligence for Turnkey.
second.
Okay, a motion is on the table to approve Clackamas Inn and Suites as the number one for due diligence for the Oregon Community Foundation, been seconded by Commissioner Fisher. Further discussion. I would like to say some points of clarification. Yes, we were presented with a list of 12 properties. We immediately did, and it was, a broker went out and said, this is what's for sale. It was a blank at that time, months ago. This is what's for sale. We immediately discarded some because they were too old. And to Commissioner Savas's point, we did not want to get into another situation like Webster Road. A property was purchased and it was so old that we had to go in and totally gut it. We are not trying not to get into that position. So we eliminated some properties because they were very, very old. And that was my criteria. I don't want to be in that situation again, where there's, all this dry rot and the roof is caving in and the studs have to be removed, basically what happened. So we eliminated some of those properties. We also eliminated some other properties for very reasons I'm not going to get into today. So, and moving forward, I do believe, gentlemen, the Clackamas Inn and Suites has kitchenettes.
Yes, there are like microwave, small refrigerator. I did want to offer a point of clarification, but I don't know if this is the appropriate time to do that.
What's your point of clarification, please?
The intention with the proposal that we sent to OCF was to use the motel purchased as is immediately for safety off the streets, similar to how we're using them now when we contract with the motel.
Like Econo Lodge, for instance.
Like Econo Lodge. And to eventually, on a longer time frame, convert them to be permanent housing units.
I see.
So there's not a need to immediately up front do any conversion to the rooms. That's part of the lens we're looking for. Is it a property that can be used tomorrow to accommodate people experiencing homelessness? And that's the goal.
Okay. Any other further, yes, Commissioner?
I would like to just remind people who are watching this meeting today that the board and the staff have been very sensitive to the community and to our cities who weighed in on some of these hotels. That drove some of the decision-making where we arrived at the hotels we're talking about today.
Commissioner Schrader, would you like to comment? Are you able to? And we will soon take a vote on this. We're going to wait.
Martha, you're muted if you're trying to speak.
It is a long distance after all.
No, she's still here.
Long
She's still here.
distance.
Oh, she is.
Actually, I think she's in the car. Yeah.
Martha, if you're trying to speak, you're on mute. Can you unmute her?
I can ask, I can't.
Okay. She's still on mute if she's trying to speak, or she's
Okay,
not.
we're going to go Commissioner Savas, and we'll wait for Commissioner Schrader to come on. Go ahead, Paul.
Yeah, I just want to just say that, to respond to Commissioner Scholl's comment, the way I would verse it is that the properties that are remaining are in unincorporated areas.
Point well noted, thank you. Yes, okay. Commissioner Schrader?
Yeah.
Okay, what we're going to do with Tony, we're going to call for a vote on this.
Commissioner Scholl,
Aye.
Commissioner Fisher,
Aye.
Commissioner Savas,
Aye.
Commissioner Schrader. Chair Smith?
Aye, motion passes 4-0. Thank you very much. Any further discussion? Do we want to entertain a second property, Board?
Okay. We're done. I move that we proceed to Phase 2 on the Comfort Suites located at 15929 Southeast McKinley Avenue as our second priority.
Second.
Commissioner Scholl has moved, we consider Comfort Inn and Suites as a second priority. Commissioner Fisher has seconded that. I think that's just good business, gentlemen, in case there's something that we don't find out. We found out on the first property is not kosher. We don't know. That's why the due diligence is offered to us, and I do appreciate that very much. Commissioner Savas.
Yes, thank you. I want to preface my comments and concerns on my experience of having a business on McLaughlin Boulevard. And from the very first week that I start moving into my building, someone was ran over and killed. And there were 3 people during that summer of 1984 that were killed on McLaughlin Boulevard, crossing because they wanted to get to an establishment on the other side of the road. And my concern with this property is actually I have 2 concerns. Number one is embedded in a neighborhood. But the second one is that all the services that I find favorable, which is why we just approved the other one, is in the same area. However, it's across the freeway on a bridge and overpass. And I challenge someone, like I did a couple times, to walk over that with all the traffic and the off-ramps and on-ramps and the trucks. It's extremely dangerous. People are going to go to where the food is, and there is no food, no anything, unless you go. The only way you can get there is that overpass. And I don't want to subject the public to any of those folks to a dangerous situation of crossing that overpass. It's not designed for pedestrians. I can't support it.
Well, thank you, Commissioner Savas. We are not choosing a hotel today. Let me be clear on this. We are authorizing for somebody else to do the research for us, should these become viable. So you can state your objections, that's fine. Is Commissioner Schrader able to participate? Okay, all right. Commissioner Scholl?
Yeah, I agree with Commissioner Savas's concerns. But when we look at a second priority on the hotels that are available to us, this hotel, Comfort Suites, is the second best priority. So if we're going to have a second pick, I think that's got to be it. I don't know if there's ways we can mitigate transportation to the Comfort Suites, should it be selected. But that is my assessment of the second most attractive hotel that's available to us today for consideration.
Thank you. Any further comments before we take a vote? Tony?
Oh.
Yeah, Commissioner, yes?
Yeah, sorry, I just wanted to let you know, I was texting with Commissioner Schroeder. She's trying to unmute. I gave my phone to Tony. She says that it's on our end, but I don't know if we can have her
Can
text.
she text the vote or not?
And then
Is that
we
even
can
legal?
verify it.
Yes.
Yes, she can. yeah.
Okay.
Okay, our attorney says, yes, we can text a vote. So, we will vote on this motion, and we will go back and allow Commissioner Schrader to text vote on the previous one as well as this one. Tony, please take the poll.
Commissioner Fisher,
Aye.
Commissioner Savas,
Nay.
Commissioner Scholl,
Aye.
Commissioner Schrader, Chair Smith.
Aye, motion passes 3-1. Was Commissioner Schrader able to text?
Commissioner Schrader indicates yes to both.
Okay, so we let the record show that the vote on Comfort Inn and Suites number 2 is passed by a 4-1 margin. The vote on Clackamas Inn and Suites, our first consideration, has passed by a 5-0 margin. Is that correct, Tony?
That is correct, Madam Chair.
Oh, you might want to keep that.
Thank you. Commissioner Fisher, you're up.
Thank you, Chair Smith. Tony, do you want to keep my phone so?
I can text Commissioner Schrader directly.
Okay, great. Just want to make sure we have all our technology working. Oh, my goodness.
Yes, thank you, Commissioner Schrader, for your participation. Go ahead.
Yes, thank you, Chair Smith. So I would like to move that we have Econo Lodge be our third choice for due diligence. I know that we currently use Econo Lodge for shelter currently and having due diligence. I know it's a much smaller property than the other two, but having that opportunity for due diligence is important so that when all of this information comes in, that we can have full information to make a decision. So I would like to make that motion.
Motion is on the table. Do I hear a second? I do have a question before a second is made. I'm going to just second this for conversation purposes. In other jurisdictions who are engaging in Project Turnkey, do they send multiple properties for due diligence, or do we know?
Yes, that was the case in some communities.
How many do you know?
Staff at OCF didn't say. They said typically they worked on one at a time, but in some communities, when there were issues of competition, they worked on due diligence on multiple properties at once.
Okay. There's a motion on the table, and it has been seconded. Any further discussion on the Econo Lodge in Milwaukee? Commissioner Scholl.
Commissioner Fisher, I appreciate the motion. A couple things on the Econo Lodge. Commissioner Savas is a resident of that area. He's commented many times about his concerns about the Econo Lodge. And, you know, the other thing, too, we're already using this to provide housing for people in need. So I'm a little bit leery about proceeding with due diligence on the Econo Lodge. I'm not really keen on the idea.
Okay. Commissioner Savas?
Yeah. Well, thanks, Commissioner Scholl. Actually, all of these are pretty well, we're not about the same distance from my home, so it's not necessarily where I reside. That's the issue here. But I did run my businesses actually in the area adjacent to the Econo Lodge, and the property adjacent to, and just down the street. Also had two point of sale or brick and mortar operations there. So the one concern I have is this is directly adjacent to the neighboring property is a residential neighborhood. That's one issue. The second one is, as I described earlier, access to services is somewhat hindered here. There's not much, the nearest store is the Fred Meyer, which is about a mile and a half away. It's quite a ways down the road. That's one issue. The other one is that currently we're using this facility. I think it's exclusively in use for sheltering today. So we wouldn't really add capacity here. And the obvious one to me is it's also the smallest one, and I'd be concerned that this one here might potentially win the day, but leave us woefully under our threshold or our needs, and yet it won't add any capacity at all. So I got concerns about this one.
Thank you. Commissioner Fisher?
Yeah, thank you, Chair Smith. I just want to remind everyone, this is not deciding a property. This is due diligence. Currently, we are utilizing the Econo Lodge, and back when this commission was just kind of brand new, Jill Smith came and did a comparison of the cost of if we had owned the property versus the operational costs of purchasing the rooms, and the cost savings is substantial. So I would suggest that we just put it on the list, allow staff to look at due diligence. Of course, we want more capacity. Of course, we want more rooms, but not even putting it on the table limits our ability. And I do also want to remind commissioners, there was a forum on housing back in I think it was in the early 2020s when this commission was brand new, and many members of the community that is around the Econo Lodge had called into that housing forum that we hosted in support of utilizing the Econo Lodge. So, as Chair Smith said earlier, this is about engaging community in a conversation. This is about looking at what options are. The public and all of us are committed to doing what we can to address housing and homelessness. So why not if they are willing to do the due diligence, the Oregon Community Foundation, why not as our third priority to say, please do, so that we can have all options available to us when we make this decision. And if there were an opportunity to have two properties, maybe Clackamas Inn and Suites and then maybe the Econo Lodge, why wouldn't we want to do that if the properties are solid, viable, and are able to have operational cost savings into the future?
Okay. Question. So what happens to the Econo Lodge residents when we acquire another property? Do we move all those people over there, or do we keep renting at hotel rates that's very expensive?
Yeah, I think that's a good question. We are bringing to you soon, in the next couple of weeks, new agreements with the Econo Lodge and an additional hotel to maintain our capacity in the near term for hotel shelter. It depends on the size of rooms, but I think that moving operations of leased motel shelter to a purchased one is an obvious good. It's an obvious savings to the county, and there's also just capacity considerations. So if the motel purchased is smaller and doesn't meet the needs of our community with respect to our homeless services system, there may be a need to continue to have on-call contracts with motels for more motel shelter. And I think that need will exist in addition to our sort of basic housing system, Chair Smith, because we are frequently experiencing emergencies, fires, ice storms, things where we do have a need to expand rapidly our ability to shelter people. And those on-call contracts allow us to do that.
The on-call contracts are okay. Emergencies sheltering, I understand. But the reason behind this, the thinking was, we're going to acquire one or two more properties, so the payment of this isn't so expensive. That's one of my main impetuses for engaging in Project Turnkey. I would be very disappointed if we were to acquire a hotel twice as large as the Econo Lodge, and that we're still continuing putting people in Econo Lodge at a very high rate. That's my expectation.
Yep.
I believe it's the board's expectation as well. Aside emergencies, aside from that type of situation, we understand it's not only the Econo Lodge that have hotel vouchers, it's all across the county. Commissioner Savas, you're up.
Yeah, as I mentioned earlier, about how dangerous McLaughlin Boulevard is, it really concerns me. I mean, I just saw too many people. I mean, I didn't tell you about the 25 years, how many people were killed in front of my businesses, but they were. It wasn't because of my business, but it was because there's no safe crossings in that area, and there's not much improved, frankly, for those folks. The other thing I mentioned before is that this area, 100% of the children who live in that area are in poverty. The last time I did the census tract checks. It's a sad state of affairs. And again, there's no buffer. I think we've learned and heard from people all around the region and the state that having buffers around these facilities is important. The other one was back in 2020, as Commissioner Fisher outlined, is that I was told by staff that the Econo Lodge and Vahid kind of verified at least these things had a requirement to be ready to go. We had to house people right away. And I was under the impression from staff that they were not in a state of readiness at the time. Thirdly, one thing I think that really bothered a lot of folks that lived on that street was, yeah, there was a public forum, but none of the people who lived in the neighborhood were contacted or even notified about that public forum, and yet they were the closest to it, including the businesses and all the neighbors on the street. And I just tell you, not one of them has been contacted to this day. That I thought was a shame. And again, the cost, I agree with the cost savings. That's why I advocated for an apartment purchase, because they are already ready to go. It would be cheaper, and we could get more people per unit. And I've been pursuing that. And as a matter of fact, as I mentioned earlier today, I have coffee with a gentleman tomorrow who owns an apartment building in an area that's got a good buffer, a number of units, and I hope to be able to bring that forward if he is indeed still willing to sell that property.
Okay, all right. There's a motion on the table. Commissioner Scholl?
One more question on Commissioner Savas's idea to look at yet another property. Should that be something we want to pursue? Do we have time on this process for Phase 2 to even look at another property?
I mean, ultimately, the decision made on the property acquisition is the Board of County Commissioners. Yeah. So if right now you've approved a first and second priority for due diligence, if those processes are conducted and the board decides that it does not want to move forward and purchase either of those properties, in our previous round of turnkey, we then moved on to third and fourth opportunities.
Okay. Okay. So, good. Thanks.
Mm-hmm. We're just approving Phase 2 due diligence. We have not made a decision on a property. This process needs to work its way through. Is Commissioner Schrader able to text a vote on this? Tony, please call for the poll.
Commissioner Savas?
Nay.
Commissioner Scholl?
No.
Commissioner Fisher?
Aye.
Commissioner Schrader? Commissioner Schrader indicates no.
No.
Chair Smith?
Aye, motion fails 2-3. So, we have decided on 2 properties for due diligence moving forward. Gary, is there anything else to add for this discussion today?
That is all for today.
Commissioners, before we take up our next issue, we're going to recess for 5 minutes and come back. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Yeah, all right. We now will come back from recess and continue our issues and updates. Gary Schmidt.
All right, next item is Economic Development Lottery Dollars Proposal. We briefed you on this months ago, and we're closing the loop with you on an amazing idea we have of how you could spend lottery dollars that come to Clackamas County. There's a memo in your packet. We'll outline it with you. Dan Johnson, Director of Transportation and Development. Cindy Moore, Senior Economic Development Coordinator, will present, and I'll help you. Go ahead.
Thank you so much. So, on March 16th of this year, you had a presentation. I am from Cindy Moore and Sarah Ekman, who I have the pleasure of being with today, regarding a discussion on the use of lottery dollars and how those lottery dollars are used to fund certain memberships, dues, grants, et cetera. Just for the sake of discussion, I had the pleasure of watching that policy session like 5 times. It was great, very enlightening and insightful about a variety of things. Lottery funds are allocated by the state of Oregon to Clackamas County to support economic development. That allocation equates to approximately $2 million. And during that policy session that you had, there were some requests from the board. Those requests were essentially around $1 million to set aside to focus on 2 different things. One of which was assessing a new process for vetting dues and memberships through the board. And the second one was the development of a possible economic development awards program. Okay, and so we're here to report back to you on both of those. I want to make sure, for the sake of the viewing audience, Oregon Revised Statute does dictate how these funds are used. They stipulate they have to be used for the provisions called out in ORS 461-450, which basically are around creating jobs, furthering economic development in Oregon, or financing public education. So with that, we are going to have a discussion around 2 topics, or whatever topics the board would like to have a discussion on today. Actually, pardon me, 3 topics. The first of which is a discussion around the dues and memberships. You'll see there's a write-up on page 2 of the memo, and there is also an attachment A. Essentially, staff felt it was important to identify criteria when looking at dues and memberships, and those are outlined on attachment A, and there's also a process outlined on that attachment as well. You'll also notice that there is an attachment B to the packet before you today, which essentially is a possible slate of memberships should the board wish to act on that slate at today's proceedings. A couple things you'll notice. We are looking to move the payment of the chamber costs, which were historically paid through the general fund through these lottery fund dollars on that list, and we'd be happy to answer any other questions you might have about those recommendations before you. I want to make sure for those who don't have the paperwork in front of them, the programs that we are discussing right now is looking at membership costs that range from $50,000 to $75,000 annually. The slate that we put forward to the board for consideration today is approximately $48,000, which still provides some additional room should other memberships the board wish to participate in become available. There's room to share and support those. And that kind of closes the discussion until further board discussion on the dues and memberships vetting process. Oh, I guess more clearly, as you can see on attachment A, the thought would be that essentially we would bring forward in July of every year kind of a list of possible dues and memberships on an annual basis, vet those through the board on an annual basis to make sure that the board is in support of those. I do want to call your attention to the criteria that are there. They're pretty clear. Obviously, just to identify a couple of them, aligns with your performance Clackamas objectives, aligns with the Office of Economic Development Performance Clackamas goals, is a BCC legislative priority, supports multiple county departments, things of that nature. Those were criteria that we'd appreciate your feedback on if you have any today. Okay. Next is a discussion around an economic development awards program. The thought is that there would be an awards. Staff would work to collaborate with the board and other interested individuals to bring forward at the beginning of the calendar year a discussion around how the board may wish to issue various awards to individuals to support the objectives the board has around economic development. You have a couple of ideas up here. These ideas were kind of galvanized. I mean, one out of Performance Clackamas objectives that you have. The first you can see is an Economic Development Assistance Grant, which is a strategic goal of the board. Second is a Food Production Assistance Grant, which is also a priority of the board. We've also heard discussion and interest from the board around education and workforce and arts and culture. Those have been discussed in the previous policy session. We don't envision these to be competitive. Essentially, we would evaluate those and bring forward a slate for the board to consider. The board may also have awards or programs they may wish to supply and support. We would consider those and bring forward those to the board as well. We'd be looking to do that kind of at the beginning of the calendar year, and then the board would take action on that list, and staff would work to distribute those awards as dictated by the Board of County Commissioners. So I'm going to stop talking now. I mean, the only thing that it's kind of an issue out there. We did hear some discussion around the Economic Development Commission and maybe them vetting of the memberships, things like that. There are a number of commissioners who suggested that. We haven't included that in the process before you today, but if that's something the board would like to submit and suggest, we can modify that accordingly. But that's basically all we have at this time. I'm not sure if there's Cindy, anything you'd like to add?
You get the high points.
Great.
Well
Thank
done.
you so much.
Thank you. I like what you've done on page 2, number 2, the 4 categories, but we're not considering those today, correct? What we're considering today for a point of decision is, number 1, dues membership vetting, $50,000 to $70,000, and then there's an additional addendum on that. So I really like the fact that we're moving some of these dues out of general fund into a pot of money that's given to us every year in the form of lottery dollars. And support of the Chambers of Commerce is important economic development. And it can be debated whether the rest of these recipients of grant monies is economic development, and I have asked, what are the deliverables? Because I take economic development quite seriously, especially in this day and age. Dan, do you have anything to add further regarding the slate that you want us to approve today on page 4? Do you have any additional information you'd like to give us on this?
So we can provide more detailed list of data regarding, I mean, essentially you've hit on the high topics, which is the Chambers of Commerce. So that's the lower section of that list. There are 4 that are outside of that list. I'm going to pass it over to Cindy here in one second to kind of talk about some of the benefits we received from some of these entities. We can provide a more formal list should the board want to consider that for future consideration. I guess one of the discussions I want to make sure that we elevate to the board is a focus, and I speak out of a number of different tongues and works that we're doing. And one of the primary focuses that we've had as a department, as a program, is to really focus on regional coordination and regional issues and getting regional consensus. You've seen it as it relates to tolling. You've seen it as it relates to a variety of different things. And that's done through a number of different ways. One is regional relationships and building those relationships with other jurisdictions, which we focused on. And other is leveraging regional entities that are around the region who have similar comments, questions, or concerns. And we've done that. We've done that through work primarily, especially on the transportation side, with West Side Economic Alliance and concerns about tolling. There's been presentations, requests for clarifications from one of our commissioners that actually was in attendance. And then Cindy has some more additional information about Creator Portland, Inc., CCBA, and others.
Go
So I'm
ahead,
gonna hand
Cindy.
it over.
I do. Good morning, Chair Smith and Commissioners. Cindy Moore with the Office of Economic Development for Clackamas County. Thank you, Dan, for the opportunity. So a few highlights I'd like to share. Greater Portland, Inc. is an amazing regional organization that we do contribute in the form of dues to support economic development efforts on a broader scale than just locally, right? So your economic development team focuses a lot of our time and attention on the retention and expansion of our existing employers. So we're out in the community. Obviously, we get the opportunity to do that with you as well, but on a day-to-day basis, we're focusing on growing our own, right? So through our partnership and leveraging Greater Portland, Inc.'s activities, this really puts Clackamas County on a national and global map when it comes to business recruitment efforts. There's a variety of ways that we could participate, and I'm using Greater Portland, Inc. just as an example here. There's a variety of different ways that we could participate with the organization, but from a staff perspective, really the business recruitment activities, the outbound site visits, the ability to host inbound visits from site selectors and real estate professionals when they're looking to open facilities and get the lay of the land. Those are the types of activities that we can leverage and not pay the full bore, if you will, for those types of activities, but in the form of a partnership around regional activity. So a couple examples for Greater Portland, Inc. This is from their quarterly report of Q1 of this calendar year, for specifically Clackamas County. From the business development project pipeline, we have six new projects since January, 4 recruitments and 2 are retention. They've also showcased our presence at the Northwest Food Processors and Packaging Expo. Again, they're there to generate leads to support the recruitment and expansion of existing employers. Outbound site visits for Select USA's clean tech industry in 2 ways, and also the support, again, as I mentioned, of familiarization tours when we have somebody who's interested in coming locally. I'll pause there in case there's any questions specifically.
Yeah,
of Greater
Commissioner
Portland.
Savas is in the queue, but Gary, I see your light on. Do you want to speak
That's
first?
Commissioner Schrader would like to speak.
Okay, we're going to go to Commissioner Savas, and then we'll call on Commissioner Schrader. Go ahead, Paul.
If you all bear with me and indulge me a little bit. So I'm just going to summarize the math on the money. There's $1 million approximately of lottery money we can leverage, right? And you've got a spreadsheet here, about $48,000 in the first grid here, and looks like a few $100,000 collectively total for the next one. So there's a lot of room there left, correct? Okay. So my question is, how did we derive the numbers for the Chambers of Commerce? It seems like a small amount of money for the chambers. I mean, how did we derive that number?
Those are dues, aren't
They're
they?
dues, they're annual dues of the
They're
chamber.
just the dues?
Correct.
Okay. Oh, just the dues? Okay, okay.
I'm sure the chambers would love to hear that, but they'd like to increase those.
Okay. Well, I'm wondering, so is it fair to say that the dues on this table they're all dues? That each one of those are actually dues?
I believe that to be the case.
Okay, all right. Okay, that changes my comment. So I support what you have listed here. I know, it pains me, but I know that, and I know that Commissioner Schrader will speak to this as well. It does pain me at times to see that large number of $25,000 for GPI, and I think, you have spoken to that. I know there's tangibles, there's intangibles, and I've seen some tangibles over the years, so I know that there's a direct benefit. Not a direct benefit, but there can be direct benefits, and we have experienced that. So in the guise of what these lottery dollars are about for economic development, I will, I'll accept that. And you can't put a price tag on a company moving here with all their business equipment. It far exceeds $25,000 and employs people. I think that's valuable. So for those reasons, I will support everything on this list in that one table, totaling $48,402.
Thank you, Commissioner Savas, and I know we have other commissioners that want to speak on this, so I believe our process today, Gary, correct me, if staff would like us to approve what's presented to us, we have 2 different attachments. First, we'll deal with this one, but Commissioner Schrader, you're up.
Yes, can you hear me now?
Yes, we can, thank you.
Well, thank you for letting me work out the technology. It is amazing, but occasionally you've got to take a little time to figure it out. So thank you for indulging me. I have always been a proponent of Greater Portland, Inc., not only for the reasons that Cindy has mentioned, but also because they are the conduit for federal dollars for the comprehensive economic development strategy. At one point in time, we were very active in GPI. I go to the meetings, but we also had staff actively going, working at that level, being part of the conversations in order to find land here in our county to see if we can locate people here. And they're also, I believe, essential to help some of our medium-sized businesses that want to get into the traded sector, international trade piece of what they do. So they do serve, I think, a significant purpose. I also think $25,000 is a lot, but I believe once we reorganize our economic development team with Cindy's help and under the direction of DTD, I think we'll even get more bang for our buck. So those are my comments, and obviously I always support all our chambers. They're the conduit for the smaller businesses and also a conduit to move, again, to identify those businesses that maybe want to move up a notch to become a larger business and/or international. So thank you for letting me speak.
Thank you, Commissioner Schrader. Thank you for Commissioner Schrader. Commissioner Scholl, you're up.
Yes, on this list of 14 organizations we pay dues to, Greater Portland, Inc. is a little over 50% of the total. My question is, does Greater Portland, Inc. do over 50% of the economic development work? And the second part of that question is, how is the $25,000 dues derived at? Is it based on the size of our county? How do they come up with 25K dues?
Yeah, please.
I'll take that question. So on the memberships and dues for Greater Portland, Inc., there are a variety of ways in which we could participate. To date, we have selected the $25,000 investor level because it allows us the opportunity to engage in those business recruitment types of activities. The higher level, the higher profile, those types of individual recruitment activities. So for a future discussion, if we wanted to take a look at what that investment level could be, we could lose some of those recruitment opportunities, but still participate in other ways.
Do you think that that $25,000 dues annually is productive?
I do.
You do, okay.
I do. In the day-to-day work of economic development activities and how we can best leverage the opportunity, your first question was, do they do 50% of the work? And my answer would be no. Because your economic development team and the staff and the partners and the departments that we work with are focused first and foremost on our retention expansion work.
Okay.
And then the recruitment piece is in leverage in this form.
Okay, well, then I support using lottery dollars for the dues. And I support the list you have.
Yeah, and as I do, Gary, we'll need to entertain a motion. We also have a second. Let's go ahead and key up the discussion on our second consideration today, and it's a request for Regional Arts and Culture Council funding. Who would like to talk to that? Cindy?
Chair, small point of order, only because of I have to leave here in a few minutes.
Do you want to vote on the first?
Yes, please.
Okay, let's do that.
Yeah. So, Chair, I move that we approve the $48,402 of dues and memberships as listed in the packet.
Second.
Okay, Commissioner Savas has moved. We approve the first round of dues totaling $48,402. Commissioner Shaw has seconded the motion. Further discussion? Yes.
Point of clarification. This is going to be using lottery dollars.
Yes, lottery dollars.
That is correct.
Okay, good, thank you.
You betcha. Okay, we will
Thank you
take.
for that.
Yeah, we'll take a vote on this. Tony?
Commissioner Fisher,
Aye.
Commissioner Scholl,
Aye.
Commissioner Schrader, Commissioner Savas,
Aye.
Chair Smith.
Aye, motion passes 5-0. Thank you for that, and thank you, Commissioner Savas. Now, we will entertain the second part of our discussion. Who wants to tee this up?
I will lead this discussion. So you've talked about this before. The Regional Arts and Culture Council, Clackamas County, has financially supported this agency for at least the last 5 years. We have not paid the membership fee for this current year, which would have been $62,050. In prior years, it's all been paid by general fund. In the proposed budget, I recommended not doing that. You agreed, although you did direct me to find other funding sources. I am proposing lottery dollars as the funding source. You could also use transient room tax. However, you have to get the Tourism Development Council to agree with you with that. You have to have a joint meeting. The time it would take to do that, I propose use lottery dollars instead for this year, and that buys you time over the next year to figure out ongoing how you'd like to spend those dues. They are requesting a decision by the end of this month, so they could leverage their grant dollars. So I'm proposing you fund $50 less, $62,000 for this current fiscal year from lottery dollars to the Regional Arts and Culture Council. That's my
Thank you
recommendation.
for that information. Does Cindy or Dan wish to contribute anything else to this?
No, it does align conceptually with the arts and culture component of the grant award program we're discussing, so.
Commissioner Fisher, would you like to make a comment?
Well, I'll go ahead and make a motion that we accept staff's recommendation and the board-approved funding to RAC in the amount of $62,000 for fiscal year 22-23 from lottery dollars.
Commissioner Fisher has moved that we approve $62,000 of lottery dollars to fund RAC. Commissioner Schrader has seconded that motion. Commissioner Scholl, did you have a light on?
Yes, Chair Smith, I had just one question.
Yeah, go ahead.
Does the Regional Arts and Culture Council receive any other monies from Clackamas County for their support?
No.
Not that
No,
I'm
they
aware
don't.
of.
They do not.
Thank you.
So, okay. Commissioner Fisher, would you please address the match component to this?
Absolutely. In the memo that Kimberly provided for us, it goes through the part that is the table, if that's before everyone. The money that we've invested in 2019, we invested $80,000, and it leveraged $217,000 additional dollars for a total amount of $317,000 that went to Artisan Arts Organization for economic vitality in Clackamas County. The next year, we were able to leverage $204,000 for a total of $304,000. We're still, the numbers are still in process for last year, but expecting that these dollars do leverage additional dollars, and that is a good thing for economic vitality in Clackamas County.
Maybe they can furnish some artwork to our new courthouse eventually. Yeah. Commissioner Salas.
Yeah, thank you. Building a little bit on Commissioner Fisher's comments, can we get I'd love to see, and just these years here, 2019, 2020, 21, and so forth, and the distribution of those dollars, where they went, and also the leverage dollars and where they went as well. So however that came out, I'd just love to know where, and just get some assurances that those are Clackamas County.
I'm sorry you didn't receive that, Commissioner Savas. I've been asking for that a long time. In fact, on the Clackamas County allocation, I know a couple of those entities on there who are doing work, of which I've engaged in. For instance, the Canby Pioneer Chapel. Every Christmas has a wonderful Christmas concert that is just, it's just honey to my ears to listen to that type of thing. So they were not, that's what, $1,100,000 rack, and then they were able to leverage that for more money. So that's just one of the areas this money is going to as well. Commissioner Savas, if you need more information, I understand.
Yeah, well, is this just 1 year? That what you just gave me
I
here?
think so.
Okay.
That was provided. Talk to Kimberly DeSantis about that, would you?
Yeah, I'd just love to get a report of each of those years listed here, 19, 20, and 21. Thank you.
You bet. Okay. We have a motion on the table. Tony, would you please take the poll?
Commissioner Schrader.
Aye.
Commissioner Fisher.
Aye.
Commissioner Scholl.
Aye.
Commissioner Savas.
Aye.
Chair Smith.
Aye. Motion passes 5-0. Thank you very much, Commissioners. Thank you, staff, for presenting today. Gary, what's up next?
So finally, we want to confirm you agree with this framework moving forward on how to spend lottery dollars. So up to $75,000 for dues and membership every year, the remaining $950,000 board-directed. How you choose to spend that money, we'll ask you at the beginning of each year how you'd like to allocate it.
And I have some ideas personally on workforce development, where I'd like to see the money go. I would like commissioners to bring your ideas and thoughts forward on how you think these lottery dollars should be spent based on your conversations with people in the community. If any staff has ideas, of course, we'll listen to that as well. Commissioner Fisher?
Yeah, and I really do like the idea of getting input from our Economic Development Commission. We have an excellent team at Clackamas County of committed folks that really have a lot of insight, so I think that would be great.
Yes, Dan.
I also want to highlight the fact that during our implementation team updates about the strategic objectives, you're going to hear discussion around some of these grant ideas that we're having, so the board can consider it at that point, or at least be informed about what we're considering especially around the food production assistance and the economic development. So those updates, I believe, are scheduled in October, I believe. So.
And it's not necessary that we spend all the money immediately, because it does carry over. So if we can't make a decision, at least we can get some of it out the door, and then we can revisit and get or however we want to proceed with that.
Chair, I have to depart.
Thank you very much, Commissioner Savas. Appreciate your participation today, as always. I think this session is ended.
No, Commissioner Schrader would like to speak.
Commissioner Schrader, I'm sorry, I didn't see the red light on Gary.
Well, I'm the one who should be sorry for earlier technology snafus, so don't apologize. Yeah. It's fine. I just wanted to echo my agreement with you, Chair, that I do think that we should look at using some of these dollars for workforce opportunities, not only with our community college, but maybe have a larger discussion with our workforce board. We are one of the few workforce boards where the county has not given funding in the past, and it might be time again to work with our college. I know you've wanted to do that with apprenticeship programs, and also take a look at some of the things that they are doing and how we can add our influence for job creation in this county. So thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Schrader.
That's it on this item. Thank you. There's only one more item we have to do today, if you'll grant us 5 more minutes, Commissioners. That's advisory board and commission appointments. Was that okay, Chair? Can we
Yes,
finish
please.
that? All right,
Please.
Tony, go ahead.
Advisory boards and commissions, the Committee for Community Involvement has 1 opening on their commission. 9 members are allowed with 4-year terms. Through a recruitment process, 3 applications were received. 1 is recommended for appointment. The recommendation is Karen Bjorklund to a first term.
I will accept a motion for.
So moved.
Seconded.
Commissioner Fisher has moved Karen Borkland for her first term for the Committee for Community Involvement. Commissioner Scholl has seconded the motion. Tony, please call the poll.
Commissioner Schrader?
Aye.
Commissioner Fisher?
Aye.
Commissioner Scholl?
Aye.
Chair Smith?
Aye, motion passes 4-0. Up next.
The next appointment is for the Forest Advisory Board, staffed by Department of Transportation and Development. They currently have 4 openings on the commission. 7 members are allowed. Through a recruitment process, 2 applications were received. Both are recommended for appointment. Brent Keller to a 7th term and William Street to a 3rd term.
I move that we accept the recommendations.
Seconded.
Commissioner Fisher has moved Brent Keller and William Street for appointment to the Forest Advisory Board. Commissioner Scholl has seconded that motion. Any further discussion? Seeing none, Tony, please call the poll.
Commissioner Scholl?
Aye.
Commissioner Fisher?
Aye.
Commissioner Schrader?
Aye.
Chair Smith?
Aye, motion passes 4-0. Gary?
We're out of time, but if you want to do any quick commissioner communications, that would be the last item.
And we also have the business meeting agenda review for
Yeah,
September 22nd.
I can skip, I'll skip that, and the board recess we can do next week.
Okay, thank you. Commissioner Fisher.
Yeah, I just want to let the commissioners know that next week will be the District 8 meeting. There'll be very important regional conversations about behavioral support, sobering, detox, Measure 110. If we want to have a solidified response as a region, as the legislative session convenes, it will be a very important meeting to see where we all align as a region on these very important issues, and I really appreciate commissioners attending. We will be hosting, and if you aren't able to attend, I know there's a lot going on in conflicts, if you wouldn't mind connecting with me and giving me your feedback before the meeting, then I can share the different perspectives with the group. Since I am the chair of the district, I will be facilitating that meeting.
Thank you, Commissioner Fisher, on that. It's on my calendar. I will be attending. However, the Willamette Falls Locks is meeting at 2 o'clock, so I may have to leave and do a Zoom meeting, but I do think it's important that we attend. Thank you very much. Commissioner Scholl, any comments?
I'm going to hold my comments till Thursday. I'll have some information for you on impact and other things then.
Thank you very much. Seeing no further business before this board, we are adjourned.